The gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ is strangely one of the most neglected things in our churches, and I can't understand why. I can understand why they would be, why the gospel would be lost in churches that honestly, you wouldn't know that they're a Christian unless they had the word Christian or Christ or Bible or something in their name, or they had a cross or something on their walls. I'm not talking about those churches. I'm talking about churches and Christians who truly believe in the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. And yet it's hardly spoken. Do you realize, Christian, that we are the harbor for the lost? Do you know what a harbor is? A harbor is the only place that is safe during a storm. Christian, you are a harbor. And the lost, when they come into your presence, do they hear the shelter of the gospel? In verse 14, Paul says, I'm debtor. I am in debt. And I'm taking this debt very... Have you ever met somebody that doesn't take debt very seriously? They'll just ring up more. They don't care. And if the bailiff comes to their door, whatever. Christian, can I ask you a question? Why is Paul in debt? The answer is very simple. If you were to find a scrap of paper in your front garden that says, all right, it's settled. Tomorrow we're going to murder the people at number 17. And that was your neighbor across the street. Do you feel like you're responsible at all to do anything with that information? Hey, you don't know them. They don't know you. But now you have information that will literally change your life. You go, no skin off my nose. I don't want to be involved in it. Or do you realize with that simple information that can save their lives, that you are now in debt to do something? He says, I'm in debt. I'm in debt to these people. He says he's in debt to every person in the planet. And he looks at Rome, that has the largest gathering of people, and he says, I've got to take the gospel to those people. I've got to take the good news of Jesus Christ to those people. You know what Paul doesn't say? I need to start planting some wells for people. We actually, as Christians, would be upset at a modern day Paul for going to such a civilized place such as Rome. What do they need the gospel for? They're doing great. They've got money. They've got everything. Ladies and gentlemen, the gospel has nothing to do with poverty of the flesh. It has everything to do with poverty of the soul. Paul looks at people, and no matter what their financial condition is, he says they are in deep trouble, they are poor, they're impoverished, and they're going to die unless they have the gospel. And by the way, you know me, I'm not against wells. I'm not against feeding people. I'm not against orphanages. But if you look at Paul's missionary journeys, he went to some pretty civilized places, didn't he? And the point was, do they have the gospel? Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to be a missionary to Israel if you want to reach Jews. We've got some in our back door. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to be a missionary in India or in Pakistan to reach Sikhs or Muslims or Hindus. We've got them in our back door. You don't have to go to Poland to reach the Poles. We've got some at our back door. Are you ready to give the gospel? Paul says he's in debt. And because he's in debt, he's ready. As much as in him is. That means every part of his fiber says, I'm anxiously looking for an opportunity to give the gospel, and I'm desperately looking for a way to get to Rome because they need to hear the gospel. Can I ask you just an honest question? How absolute ready are you to give the gospel? Are you ashamed? Paul definitely wasn't ashamed. I mean, he'd been beaten. He'd been called a fool. He'd been stoned. What do you think's going to happen to him in Rome? Then they're going to throw a parade for him down the Via Sacra? He says, I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of God. Paul says, I'm a debtor. And I'm not ashamed of this gospel. Look what it says next. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it, and it alone, is the power of God unto salvation. Now, I just want to stop right here. This church and this pastor, you will never hear something different from this pulpit when I'm standing here. There is no other thing that can bring somebody to Christ. There's no gimmick. There's no trick. Now, there's different ways to present the gospel, but if the gospel at the end is not being presented, it is worthless. If you have a ministry that goes from place to place to place to place, and your job is to be nice to somebody, and they say, by the way, don't mention Jesus. What? That's not a ministry. There is no ministry there. Zero. Do you think at any time Paul the Apostle told his people, hey, listen, by the way, when you go out, don't mention Jesus at all, please? Do you really think that happened? Do you think when Peter went out, do you think he kept his Lord very quiet? Well, people might hate me. Yes! Yes, they will. They hated Jesus. They're certainly going to hate you. What are you ashamed of? What are you afraid of? What are you embarrassed about? Are you ashamed of the gospel? What else is the divine power of God? Think about that for a moment. There is nothing else that can save a soul, and there certainly is nothing else that saved you. What in the world could we be embarrassed about? Paul says, I'm not ashamed. I am debtor, both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So as much as in me is, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness,